One of the most painful things in studying Torah is to see the tremendous struggles that the family of Jacob had, that Jacob had with his family, with his sons. It really starts at the start. The fact is that the family got off on the wrong foot. Lavan tricks Jacob. Jacob ends up, instead of with the woman he wanted, he ends up with the woman he didn't want. Then there's more tension. The older kids are from the unfavored wife. The unfavored wife clearly knows she's unfavored, and so do her kids. She actually names her kids like, maybe now my husband will like me, which, imagine being named, maybe now my father will like my mother. So obviously there were a lot of tensions all along. We're going to explore some of those tensions because those tensions never go away. And as we're going to see at the close of the book of Genesis, we're going to see that those tensions are alive and well. Let's talk about the word bracha, blessing, because we're going to be talking a lot about blessings this evening. So we always assume, right, what's a blessing? A blessing is you should have long health, and you should have good health, you should have long life. A blessing, oh, good things, good things, good things. It's interesting to note that probably a better translation, or certainly a meaningful translation of bracha, and for that matter, the word baruch in all of our blessings, stems from the Hebrew word brecha, which means a spring-fed pool. That a bracha is a way of acknowledging that the source of your blessings. It's not necessarily means saying nice things. A blessing is from the source. Somehow or other, you're getting from the source, you're getting some sort of insight, some sort of something that will benefit you. Jacob, when he blesses his children, this is not, this is not Santa Claus coming with gifts by any means. Pardon the seasonal comparison. All right. Jacob is not blessing his children exclusively with everything should be great. Jacob, as he is preparing to die, as he has one foot in this world and one foot out of this world, he shares from a very deep place. He shares with them a number of things that he hopes will be helpful for them to understand their self-understanding, but he knows they're not necessarily going to be happy with. This is no secret. When we read through the blessings, you'll see it says openly in the text. In particular, Reuven, Shimon, and Levi, Jacob really gives it to them. And we're going to talk about why, but one step at a time. I want to start to take a look at the blessings, and I'm going to share my screen with you. And we're going to take a look. We're going to walk our way through a number of selections in Genesis in order to get the bigger picture here. Okay, screen share time. Must be here. Share. Okay, I don't need that anyway. All right, let's start here. Before Jacob ever gets to bless his sons, he makes a remarkable move. There were 12 sons. Joseph had 2 sons. What does Jacob do? He adopts, essentially, as we're about to read in the verses, he adopts Ephraim and Manasseh, the 2 sons of Joseph. He adopts them and gives them full share amongst the Jewish people. In other words, he doubles Joseph's portion. Now, normally doubling of the portion goes to the firstborn, but it's not going to go to Reuven. That's either because of what Jacob says to Reuven, as we'll see, and what it's based on, or because, quite frankly, in Jacob's eyes, Joseph was his firstborn. Now, you'll say to me, well, what do you mean? He was the 11th child. How could he be in his eyes the firstborn? So one of the benefits of reading Torah every week is that you start to notice things you wouldn't notice otherwise. And in last week's Torah portion, I noticed something that I would say was, at the very least, very surprising. Let me just find the reference. Well, first of all, let me share these verses with you. Okay. Wow. Here we go. Last week's Torah portion. I missed it again. Just give me one more moment here to get it in the right place. Here we go. So as Jacob is coming down to Egypt, we get an accounting of Ye'ela Shemot B'nei Yisrael by Mitzrayim. These are the names of the Israelites, Jacob and his descendants who came to Egypt. Jacob's firstborn Reuven and his sons, Simeon's sons, Levi's sons, etc., etc. Right? It lists the 6 sons of Leah, and it says, these are the sons whom Leah bore to Jacob in Padan Aram, in addition to his daughter Dinah. Persons in all, male and female, 33. Wonderful. Then it talks about Gad and Asher, who were the children of, as you can see here, these were the descendants of Zilpah. I should make this much larger so you can actually read it. Okay, these were the descendants of Zilpah, who Laban gave to his daughter. 16 persons, very nice. B'nai Rachel, Eshes Yaakov, Yosef. Binyamin, the son of Jacob's wife, Rachel, were Joseph and Benjamin. What? Let me read that verse to you again. The sons of Jacob's wife. Notice something strange about that? Rachel is referred to as his wife. Leah is just another name. As a matter of fact, right, go back one verse. These were the descendants of Zilpah who Laban gave to his daughter. Leah, she bore this, right? Let's look at how Leah is described. These were the sons of Leah, bore to Jacob and Padan Aram. She's like one of the handmaids here. Right? B'nai Rachel Eshes Yaakov. As if he only had one wife. What we're going to see here is that, unfortunately, the family tensions that have been simmering for many decades did not go away at the end of the story. And the idea that we have a happily ever after story is unfortunately not the case. And there are important lessons to learn from it. Okay. Let's go here. Let's go to should we go to the blessings? That's that, and that's that. Yes, let's go to the blessings themselves. Jacob is now going to bless his sons. He get together, everybody, I'm going to bless you. By the way, they've all lost a certain percentage of their inheritance coming into this meeting, right? Because Jacob's already given about 8% of their inheritance to Joseph's sons, right? Because now Joseph gets 2 tribes. All right. Jacob called to his sons and said, come together that I may tell you what will befall you in days to come. Assemble and hearken, O sons of Jacob, hearken to your Israel your father. And of course, he's going to say all sorts of nice things to Reuven. Not. Reuven, you are my firstborn, my might and first fruit of my vigor, exceeding in rank and exceeding in honor. Unstable as water, you shall excel no longer. For when you mounted your father's bed, you brought disgrace. My couch he mounted. For those of you not familiar with this unpleasant incident, which they skipped in elementary school when they taught it, or in Hebrew school, here's the story. Here's the story. Wow. I'm sorry, I have a little location problem here. The story is not where I wanted it to be, so just give me a moment here and I will locate it. I apologize for the delay. Okay. Tanakh, Genesis, should be at the end of Vayishlach. So we go to Parsha. By the way, this is Sefaria.org. You don't need a subscription. It's all free. Y'all should check this out. Sefaria, great resource. Okay, Torah portion of Vayishlach. I'm going to say Chamishi, but we'll see. No. I really wanted to read you this story, so just bear with me, please. Okay, how about if I just tell you the story? Basically, it's unfortunately, very straightforward. Reuven decided one night when Jacob was sleeping with one of the other 3 wives / stepwives, he went and he slept with Bilhah, his father's I don't think concubine is technically the right term, but the handmaid or his wife, if you want to say he had 4 wives, whatever you want to call it. Reuven sleeps with Bilhah, who is his father's wife, or however you want to define her, not his mother, but he sleeps with her. Obviously, Jacob is very upset. And as you can see in the blessings, he basically says to Reuven, listen, this was outrageous. And because of that, al tosar, you shall excel no longer. You blew it. You blew it. And you know what you blew? You blew being the firstborn. You blew your double portion. You blew your leadership role. Sorry. You're just unstable as water. You need to be more stable. You need to be more, a lot of things, apparently. Let's go to the next blessing. Shimon and Levi Achim. Simeon and Levi are a pair. Their weapons are tools of lawlessness. I remind you that after their sister Dinah was raped, right, they trick Shechem and Hamor. They trick the city of Shechem into circumcising themselves, and they come in and they wipe out the city, something about which Jacob was most unhappy. Shimon and Levi were the ones who went in and did the killing. The rest of the brothers just pillaged, but they killed. Let my person not be included in their council. Let not my being be counted in their assembly. For when angry, they slay men, and when pleased, they maim oxen. Not nice. Cursed be their anger so fierce and their wrath so relentless. I will divide them in Jacob, scatter them in Israel, which is a reference to the fact that when the inheritances were made, Shimon and Levi were separated in the inheritance. Unfortunately, there's been some things in the family history here that obviously Jacob is letting them know, listen, if you guys think that this all went away, no, you have flaws and you need to correct these flaws. Now we come to the story of redemption. Yehuda. You, O Judah, your brothers shall praise. Your hand shall be on the nape of your foes. Your father's sons shall bow low to you. Judah is a lion's whelp. Oh, pray, my son, have you grown? On pray, my son, have you grown? He crouches, lies down like a lion, like the king of beasts who dare rouse him. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, so that tribute shall come to him, and the homage of people be his. He tethers his ass to a vine, his ass's foal to a choice vine. He washes his garments in wine, his robe in blood of grapes. His eyes are darker than wine, his teeth are whiter than milk. All lovely. What did Judah do to deserve such a great blessing? Basically, what Judah did is he saved the whole situation. From Jacob's point of view, Judah put himself on the line and said, I'll take Benjamin down, I'll get us food. And as a result of that act and the way that Judah handled the situation, Joseph reveals himself, and a lot of good things happen after that. Judah becomes, other than Joseph, who's down in Egypt, which is a complex relationship in its own right, Judah becomes the favorite son. So we see, for example, last week's Torah portion, that when Jacob is getting ready to bring the family down to Egypt, he sends Judah ahead to set everything up. Judah has become the leader amongst the brothers. Leave Joseph out of the equation. Judah has become the leader amongst the brothers. Okay. Next. Zevulun and Issachar get very nice sort of blessings that talk about their essential character. There's nothing much to talk about. Nothing negative about Dan or Gad or Asher or Naphtali. And then, of course, Joseph. Jacob has many, many nice things to say about Joseph. The one thing he won't say about him is that Joseph's going to rule. He's not going to rule, but he gives Joseph the double portion. He clearly treats Joseph as his Bechor, as his firstborn. Keep in mind that this type of treatment has been very much not appreciated by the brothers earlier in the story. However, at this point in the story, and now we come to a key point in understanding these blessings. At this point in the story, Jacob knows the brothers did something. Jacob knows the brothers did something to get Joseph into this mess. He didn't get there himself. Therefore, Jacob, with this in mind and knowing this, This tension is there. Obviously, the tensions that brought that about, Jacob is still concerned about. These tensions between the older brothers and the way that they either treat other people or they treated Joseph, etc., etc. We have to see these blessings in the context of Jacob knows what happened. He's giving Joseph effectively the firstborn's portions, but he's not giving him the leadership. And so now we'll just take a moment to mention why he's not giving him the leadership. And then I want to pause in case there are any questions or comments. I want to pause. And we can stop sharing here. Okay. Joseph's not one of them anymore. He's not. Jacob, reasonably, by the way, is afraid to turn leadership over to Joseph because for all Joseph's success and all of his advancements, he's an Egyptian, or based on last week's class, a Hyksos Egyptian. But either way, he's an Egyptian now. He's part of the ruling class. As a matter of fact, there's no great relationship between Joseph and his father. We are told that Jacob comes down to Egypt and he wants to see Joseph. You're going to have this reunion. They have the reunion. And then we are told in this week's Torah portion that Jacob was not well, right? So he wants to bless. So he calls Joseph first, and he calls in Joseph's two sons, and he says to Joseph, who are these guys with you? That doesn't sound like grandpa's been spending a lot of time with his grandchildren. Because we should keep in mind, from Joseph's point of view, how did his life get... nobody ever landed on their feet better than Joseph did. But how does life become such a mess? Because his father blew it. His father made some significant mistakes. Understandable. I understand why Jacob's upset. He ended up with a wife and 6 kids he never wanted. The wife he wanted died. And, his son from that wife, who he favored, was taken away by the brother, right? All of those things. So basically here, again, the point is, for this particular point, what I want to say is as follows. There's a lot of bad blood here. Joseph, it would seem, did not have a great relationship with his father. So his father certainly wasn't, and Joseph is flat out an Egyptian at this point. He's a member of the ruling class of Egypt. He is no longer, nobody's going to be comfortable with his being put in charge as leader. So Yehuda, who has shown leadership as well, and has shown leadership within the context of the family, Yehuda is given leadership. But who is Jacob's firstborn? Who arguably could have been given the leadership? Joseph. As a matter of fact, we know pretty much by implication that was originally Jacob's plan. He wanted Joseph to be the leader, right? He gives him a coat of many colors. He gives him this distinguished coat. It's his favorite son. The brothers figure out pretty quickly that despite the fact that their mother, who their father doesn't seem to like very much, despite the fact that their mother produced the first 6 children, including the firstborn to Jacob, it's pretty clear that Joseph favors Jacob. Sorry, Jacob favors Joseph. So our bottom line here is, and then I'll take questions and comments if you have any. Our bottom line here is that we still have a lot of family fault lines that are being exposed here. Jacob is making it very clear to his older children from Leah that I don't want to hear any more about the fact that you're not leading. You guys blew it. Judah is going to lead, even though he's 4th born. Right, we think Judah, right? The great Judah. But he was 4th born. He was number 4. He's going to be the leader. And in terms of the firstborn, that's Joseph. Okay. This, again, is going to create some tensions, and we'll see where those tensions come out in a moment. All right, let me pause and give anyone who would like the opportunity, whether that's on Facebook. Keep in mind, there's a 15-second delay on Facebook. Anybody would like to, if you have comments or questions, and we have to just wait to give the people on Facebook enough time to ask their questions. So we're going to wait about 60 seconds here, just in case. If you have a question, raise your hand. If not, just put your head down like Morty did so I can read his National Museum of the Army hat. Oh, Esther, is that you raising your hand? No, that wasn't you raising your hand. Don't do that at an auction. It's not going to go well. All right. All right, a little bit more time here for our friends on Facebook. We do have 3 people participating via Facebook, so I want to give them a chance. All right. Let's move on. That the story wasn't a happily ever after story is reflected in one other source. And this is the last source I'd like to share with you. So I'm going to share my screen again. And we are going to go to here. And we're going to go to here. And I'm going to make it large enough for people to read. Here we go. Jacob dies. End of this week's Torah portion, Jacob dies. And now we are in the very last chapter of the book of Genesis, chapter 50. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, what if Joseph still bears a grudge against us and pays us back for all the wrong that we did him? So what are the brothers concerned about here? Joseph's going to take his revenge. It's not a happily ever after situation. And really the only thing that we're worried is we're worried that the only thing that's been holding Joseph back all this time was dad. He wouldn't do it to dad, but now he's going to pay us back. So they sent a message to Joseph. Before his death, your father left this instruction. By the way, let's be clear. The Torah makes it very clear that this is a lie that they are saying. So shall you say to Joseph, forgive, I urge you, the offense and guilt of your brothers who treated you so harshly. Therefore, please forgive the offense of the servants of the God of your father. And Joseph was in tears as they spoke to him. His brothers went to him themselves, flung themselves before him, and said, we are prepared to be your slaves. But Joseph said to them, have no fear. Am I a substitute for God? Besides, although you intended me harm, God intended it for good, so as to bring about the present result, the survival of many people. And so, fear not, I will sustain you and your children. Thus he reassured them, speaking kindly to them. Okay. Besides the obvious sort of they're panicking, they're worried he's going to get revenge, etc., there's a key revelation in here. They sent a message to Joseph saying, before his death, your father left this instruction, forgive, I urge you, the offense and guilt of your brothers who treated you so harshly. Jacob knows the brothers did it. Any illusion that we're under, that there's all sorts of good feelings between Jacob and his sons at the end, is certainly not the case. Jacob is clearly blaming the brothers, Reuven, Shimon, Levi. He's not happy with any of them. And he's not going to be very nice to them because he knows what they did. And he knows why they did it, and he knows that those tensions are there. And therefore, what Jacob does is he basically sends a message to the future of the Jewish people. And that message is, I don't want to hear, Reuven has no claim to anything. Shimon and Levi don't have any secondary claims. They blew their claims. They can't claim, Reuven can't say, I'm the firstborn, I should be king. Shimon can't say I'm next in line, or Levi can say I'm next in line. I can't say any of those things because I know what they did. You know what they did. What they did was wrong. They're not going to be the leaders. Jacob clearly knows what happened. Does Jacob know every detail? Maybe yeah, maybe no, right? Because here it says, I urge you, the offense and guilt of your brothers who treated you so harshly. Does he know all the details? Maybe yeah, maybe no. But he certainly knows that because of them, Joseph ended up in Egypt under terrible circumstances. We all would love, let me stop screen sharing here because I have some closing remarks that I think are important. We would all love for our family to get along, and everybody to get along. And in many of our families, that does happen. And as kids get older and wiser, sometimes they get together. But the reality is that it's not always that simple. Jacob recognizes that his responsibility is not to coddle his sons, but rather to make sure that his sons and their descendants know that there are serious problems that need to be paid attention to. Reuven, got to be more stable. Shimon and Levi, you got to deal with your anger problems. Okay, this isn't exactly, niceties. But what Jacob recognizes is that our obligation ultimately is not just to coddle our children and get them to say nice things to them, but ultimately we somehow or other, we have to communicate to our children and to our families their shortcomings as well. Because ultimately the greatest blessing is not to be told everything's going to be okay. And the greatest blessing is not to be told that you're going to have a big fat inheritance. And the greatest blessing is not to be told anything other than this is who you are. True blessing is self-knowledge. And that's what Jacob wants to give to his children. He wants them to have self-knowledge, to be aware that they need to fix things. And that because when you have a problem and you act out on your problem and you do the wrong thing, there are consequences. Sorry, Reuven, you're just not the firstborn anymore. One final textual point. I think it's really worth thinking about the fact that in the lineage of Jacob going down to Egypt, only Rachel is referred to as his wife. We're always thinking it was Leah and Rachel and Leah, and they were the wives. And then there was Bilhah and Zilpah, and they were the handmaids. Okay. It's very, very interesting that the text here treats only Rachel as his wife. I'm not sure all the implications. I only noticed it recently, and it's something that I'm thinking about. But it does color our understanding of the entire story. It's one thing to have thought all along that, something, Jacob resented the fact that he got stuck with Leah. But okay, got stuck with Leah. But when you see this accounting, you start to understand why Leah named her children things like, maybe daddy will like me now. Because it would appear from the text that when Jacob, if it's an internal census, if you will, or it's just the text explaining it, Jacob viewed Rachel as his wife and didn't view Leah as his wife. So when we go back and we try to understand the antipathy of the brothers towards Joseph, and we know that that antipathy was born of the genesis of the relationship between Jacob and his wives, right? That antipathy ran so deep that at the very least, Leah kind of knew that Jacob didn't think of her as his wife. Technically, it's his wife. Nobody can argue that. They got married. They consummated the marriage. It was his wife, technically, but now we can see, I think, it gives us a clear insight into how despised Leah must have felt. That in Jacob's mind, she was not even his wife. And we can understand the enmity that came from that. And for that matter, maybe even point some blame at Jacob. Because, something, once you're stuck in the situation, if you treat Leah that way and her sons that way, and they're all running around with names like, maybe daddy will love my mommy sometime, it's not going to go well. It's not going to go well. I think that the Torah here is pointing some blame at Jacob and plenty of blame, or at least Jacob is, putting plenty of blame where it belongs on Reuven and on Shimon and Levi. As to whether Jacob recognizes fully his role and his faults in the way that the relationship went down, maybe yeah, maybe no. It's hard to say. But at the end of the day, the family never really stitched together. At least not until the time of the Exodus. The family never really stitches together. And it's tragic. But really, for most of us, I think we know that most families have a tragic element to them. So if it's any consolation and any solace for those of us who have struggled with our kids at any point and have certainly found ourselves disappointed by the results, If it's any solace, Jacob had the same problem. And listen, we have to make sure that our kids understand who they are. And in part, that's our responsibility. And we also do well to look to ourselves and think carefully, and we all have done this, about the way that we conducted the relationships we had with our kids, the way we conducted our relationships with our families, and look back and ask, did I adequately convey value to all of my kids the same way? Did my kids feel there was a favorite or not a favorite? You have to wonder why all this stuff's in the Torah, right? Why not leave all these harsh details out? So much of this story could have been told, and you would never had to know that Reuven slept with his stepmother, I guess would be the right term, or step handmaid. Okay. And Shimon and Levi did bad things, et cetera, et cetera. We didn't need to know all this tension, right? The Torah could have just started with the story of Exodus. Part of the reason why we have the story of Genesis is to teach us that we have lessons to learn about family, that even our patriarchs were not perfect parents. As a matter of fact, it's pretty clear that all three of them were highly imperfect parents. We're also imperfect parents. Learn the lessons that we can. And we should have a little compassion on ourselves. To say it's hard to raise a family and keep it together and get it right, it's the hardest job in the world. It's such a hard job, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob couldn't do it. We should have some compassion on ourselves as well.